Hello hunters, and welcome back to Super Fan Natural. Guys, in case you haven't noticed, theorizing about stories is one of my personal favorite pastimes. I love fan theories that fill in holes and unanswered questions within a story. I love making them, and I love reading ones that already exist. Supernatural has a bunch of gaping holes in its narrative that fans have crafted theories to try and explain. And in this video, I'm going to go over some of the most popular ones in the fandom and weigh the evidence for or against each so that I can give my opinion on how likely they are to be true. Instead of a simple yay or nay, I'm going to grade them on a scale of A through F. Though keep in mind that these are just my opinions based off of how I read the evidence. If you don't agree with me, that's totally fine. For our first theory, let's talk about the Princes of Hell. The Princes are four of the most powerful demons in the universe. They were the first generation of Hellspawn that Lucifer created after Lilith, meaning that they've been around since vague biblical times. In addition to being super old, they're all super duper strong. They wield insane powers not seen in other demons, things like immunity to angelic blades and the ability to vaporize angels with their bare hands. Why are they so freaking powerful? Outside of being old, we don't really know. It's stated that their demonification was done personally by Lucifer himself, but we don't get any clues as to why he chose to only make 4 yellow-eyed mega demons, and didn't bother giving the rest of his hellish legions some of their super sick super Satan powers. One theory that fans have put forward is that the princes weren't regular demons. I mean, obviously they're older and stronger, but maybe they were unique even before becoming demons. In Supernatural, demons are created from the souls of humans that are sent to hell and tortured until they mutate into dark, malevolent spirits. As far as we know, every single demon used to be human, but maybe, just maybe, the princes are so powerful because they started off as something more angelic. Ever since Azazel first flashed his yellow peepers back in Season 1, some fans claimed that he was actually a fallen angel, or maybe a Nephilim, aka a human-angel hybrid. Even after the truth about demons was revealed, this theory persisted, and for a decent reason. Not only was Azazel immune to holy water, he explained this feat with the line, "You think something like that works on something like me?" implying he's, well, something different from a regular demon. In addition, Azazel in real-life mythology is a fallen angel, and his extra-biblical story is tied heavily into the fall of man and the rise of Nephilim. The Nephilim angle really gained traction in later seasons when it was revealed that hybrids are a thing in Supernatural, and their eyes give off a golden glow it's sort of similar to the pale yellow of the princes. That's not the only thing that they share. While the overall power of each Nephilim varies, those on the higher end wield some of the princes' more unique skills, things like the ability to curse-explode angels and an immunity to their blades. So, is it possible that these ancient demons were actually Nephilim, or even full-on angels in life? Well, I definitely don't think that they're angels, mostly because they seem to be stronger than anything below an archangel, and I don't really feel like that makes sense. Now Nephilim, on the other hand, the evidence for that angle is more believable. The similarities between the two species are pretty interesting, and it helps that after Season 2, the princes were reintroduced to the series right when an actual Nephilim came into play. Actually, of the 4 princes, 2 had storylines that revolved entirely around Jack. At the same time, if these demons were human Halo hybrids, isn't it kind of strange that that never came up? Like, it makes sense that Azazel wouldn't mention such a thing, but when Dagon and Asmodeus spend all their time guarding and tracking a Nephilim, I don't know, I feel like one of them would reveal, "I know so much about Nephilim because I am one," or something. The best argument against this is that since Nephilim are public enemy number 1 to heaven, the princes wanted to keep their true nature a secret so that they wouldn't be actively hunted by the God Squad. But still, it's kind of weird that they would still be so scared once they actually were being hunted by a much weaker heavenly host. I don't know, for me this one gets a B. It could be true, but if so, there's some weird holes in the writing. The princes may or may not have been angelic in a previous life, but they aren't the only demons to whom some fans attribute a heavenly origin. Crowley is by far the most prominent demon in the show, and he's one of the very few whose backstory we actually know about. According to Crowley, his mom, and his son, our red-eyed friend was originally a 17th century Scotsman named Fergus MacLeod, who sold his soul to a demon in exchange for a slightly longer dong. Despite the number of characters who corroborate this story, some details within the show led a few fans to believe that there may be more to Crowley than a small-willed Scotsman. Sorry. In Season 8, Crowley has a conversation with the angel Naomi, in which they reminisce about some kind of meeting or hookup or slutty costume party in Mesopotamia. Now, Mesopotamia is an old name for Iraq, or at least part of it, one that has been around since BC times. The wording of this vague exchange led some people to assume that the show was claiming Crowley had actually been around since biblical times, which contradicted the established canon for his character. After this, fans started questioning some of his other quirks, like his vast knowledge of angels, and the fact that he's the only demon in the show to have a red smoke form instead of black. Could it be possible that Fergus MacLeod was an angel in a previous life, one who fell from grace and was reborn as a human, then later reborn as a demon? Nothing like that ever actually happened in the show, but there is a reason to believe that it's at least possible. In Season 4, we met Anna Milton, a woman who was secretly a fallen angel that had removed her grace and somehow ended up being reborn as a regular human. So that part has some lore backing. But could she have taken it a step further and become a demon? Well, that part's a bit iffy. We don't know for sure if fallen angels gain souls after losing their grace. There is some evidence that they do, notably a line from Metatron claiming that a fallen cast's soul would return to heaven after he died, but there's room to argue that he didn't actually know what he was talking about. Also, Nephilim are confirmed to have souls, yet when they die, they have a chance to end up in the empty rather than heaven or hell. So it may or may not be possible, but ultimately it doesn't matter because I definitely don't think Fergus was ever an angel. The evidence just doesn't stack up. The Mesopotamia thing is a bit weird, but not necessarily as weird as you might think. Yes, it's a really old, outdated name, but the full official rebrand to Iraq happened in 1921, meaning that it's totally possible Crowley and Naomi could have met up there while it was still being called Mesopotamia. Hell, there are people alive today who still view former Soviet states as the USSR, so even after the change, they could have been people using the old identity. But Jack, Crowley knew all sorts of secrets about angels. Did he though? Certainly by the end of Season 8, but he only got there through torture and experimentation. In fact, he had to put Samadriel under enhanced interrogation in order to gain information that a former angel would most certainly have. Now you could argue that he lost a bunch of memories or something, but then how would you explain his lack of angel radio? All angels, even human fallen ones like Anna, have a telepathic connection to heaven, something that we never saw from Crowley in any way at all. Again, there's a way you can try to make it make sense, but the more holes you have to fill with speculation and headcanon, the weaker the theory becomes. So yeah, I'm sorry, but it's a no for me, dog. F. Sticking with angels, we've got a quick little theory involving everyone's favorite seraph, Castiel. See, throughout the 15 seasons of monster hunting, Sam and Dean take a lot of damage. They get thrown around and bitten and scratched and stabbed and stung by bees and much, much more. Fighting the forces of evil is a rough gig, and it takes a hell of a toll on the boys' bodies. At least, it should. Based on the amount of punishment that they endured throughout the series, Sam and Dean should be absolutely covered head to toe with scars. Their joints should be jelly, their brains scrambled to hell, and they probably shouldn't have many teeth left. Now, they do have some scars, but only cool or sexy ones along the arms. Their faces, chests, and backs? Pristine, nary an unseemly mark upon them. Similarly, they don't really show many signs of internal or joint damage. And yeah, they're in good shape, but my god, people get permanently injured from minor falls, yet these two can tank multiple broken bones and heal up perfectly? Well, that's where Cass comes in. See, angels have incredible healing abilities. With a single touch, they can repair insane damage, remove incurable diseases, and even Lazarus the recently dead. Many fans believe that the reason that the Winchesters seem to be able to walk off so much crippling damage is because they have an angel on the payroll who gives them regular tune-ups off-screen. We know for a fact that Cass is responsible for wiping away a lot of the bros' more grisly owies. I mean, we just straight up see him or other angels heal up the boys several times throughout the show. The question is, does he do this between episodes? And is this why they're in such tip-top shape? Well, sure. There's no reason why this can't be the case, at least during the times when he's around and powered up. I will say, this doesn't have to be the only answer. Maybe anytime that they get magically healed, be it by Cass or something else, they get an overall repair job that resets their body's damage counter to 0. Maybe the extra luck that God gave them helps them heal quicker and more perfectly than the average Joe. Plenty of possibilities, but the Dr. Cass explanation works just fine. This one gets an A. Alright, so these last two theories both revolve around one of the show's most controversial moments, and how some fans try to make it make sense. See, capital G God exists in the world of Supernatural, And while he's not exactly the undisputed most powerful figure in the verse, he is the almighty creator of everything except a couple of other cosmic entities. Before Moria, God, aka Chuck Shirley, was a complicated character. He wasn't exactly the all-knowing, all-loving Heavenly Father, but he also wasn't evil. He was presented as a creator who had lost faith and interest in the world he made, and who felt that humanity's issues just weren't really his problems anymore. In Season 11, he finally comes out of retirement to try and take down his sister, and by the end of the season, he's reached a place of peace and acceptance of his creations. Then, in the final episode of Season 14, it turns out that Chuck is actually a bigger dick than we thought. Apparently, he'd been secretly manipulating events for an unspecified amount of time, constantly shaking things up so that there would always be Winchester adventures for him to watch. This culminates in him trying to steer Dean into slaying a soulless Jack, and when Dean doesn't go through with it, Chuck just straight up becomes the final villain of Supernatural. As you might expect, some people really did not like Chuck, aka God Almighty himself, becoming a villain, and this led to a few fan speculations that maybe Chuck just isn't actually God. What if he was never God? I mean, nobody, not even the Archangel Raphael, recognized him as God, and when people do finally believe him, it's under circumstances that he controls. He reveals his true divine form to Metatron, but Metz was wearing special glasses that Chuck provided, so maybe these specs were enchanted to make the reveal convincing. Later, the God-detecting amulet glows bright in his presence, but again, Chuck has control here. He literally turns the amulet back on, claiming that he had previously deactivated it in order to hide his identity. Who's to say this isn't another parlor trick? Beyond all that, his powers are sort of inconsistent. One of the best examples comes in Season 11, when he seems to believe that Gabriel is dead and Michael is insane, despite both being lies. Fans speculate that perhaps the Shadow could be the true God, or maybe the nebulous being that split into Chuck and Amara was the real God, or maybe the actual Big G just never really shows up on screen, and Chuck was just some sort of magical trickster who managed to tap into some serious juju. So what's the verdict here? Is this Weasley manipulative little nerd really supposed to be the Alpha and the Omega? Yeah, he is. I'm sorry, there's just no real evidence to suggest that any other being in the show is actually God instead of Chuck. Honestly, I'm not really sure why people gravitate to the idea that the Shadow is God. I mean, yeah, it's powerful and mysterious, but it doesn't do anything that's all that godly. As for the idea that there's some other true God hiding out there in the universe, well, again, there's no strong evidence for that. Look, if it helps the story make sense to you, then go ahead and headcanon the existence of a separate, real God, but within the canon of the show, Chuck is the Lord. D for this theory, probably not true, but it could be, I guess. Okay, so Chuck is God. But what if he was never actually evil? What if everything that happened after Season 11 was all part of a master plan, and his apparent defeat was really him willingly passing on the torch to a new being who he believed could run the multiverse better than him? It sounds nuts, but is it? I mean, Chuck's whole thing in Season 5 is that he doesn't feel like he should be the one to fix everyone's problems. And when he heads out with Amara in Season 11, he tells Dean that the universe doesn't really need him. There's also the fact that he's a writer who canonically does manipulate events in order to get a good story. And also, God is supposed to be all-powerful and infallible. Maybe he felt that creation would be in better hands if it were overseen by a created being, and so he concocted a story that would truly allow him to leave his job and hand over the reins to someone who would have been forged into a good and fair person who understood the weight of power and the responsibility of a god. This theory could help make sense of some of Chuck's more baffling decisions. Why did he send Kevin to hell? So that the team would have an inside man after he opens a rupture later on. Why set up Jack to be turned into a divine black hole? Because him getting god-sucking powers was the plan all along. So, do I think that the entirety of the last few seasons was all part of Chuck's master plan? Well, the thing about theories like this is that they're kind of unfalsifiable. Like when the argument is that an all-powerful character orchestrated everything, and any instance of them on the losing end was an act, I mean, you can't really disprove that, right? The strongest evidence against this theory is Chuck's interactions with the guy in the alternate universe Radio Shack. For people who believe this theory, anything that God says or does in front of characters directly involved in getting to the endgame can be chalked up to him acting in order to move the plot forward. If you really wanted to, you could extend this thinking to his little session with Becky, because she is connected to Team Free Will, and maybe they could catch wind of what happened here. But in the episode Galaxy Brain, Chuck spends all of his screen time ranting to and tormenting a completely random dude in an alternate universe who plays absolutely no role in the larger story. If this is an act, who's it for? Us? Is he trying to trick us in the real world? To me, this interaction really only makes sense if God is being genuine. But like I said, this is one of the only real holes in the theory that can't be explained away. Now, this reading of the narrative does kind of go against the fundamental premise of the show, that being not letting someone else determine your fate. By recontextualizing the final plot to have been a successful secret plot to manipulate the main characters in one way or another, it kind of spits in the face of that message, doesn't it? You could try to make it a bit better by reading it as God setting up a series of seemingly impossible tasks that the team ultimately passes, but I'm still not really a fan of that. At the same time, I do think that this theory works a bit better as an alternate reading of Chuck, and like I said, you can't really fully disprove it, so I give it a solid C. But what do you think? Do you believe any of these theories? Are there any others that you feel strongly about? There's plenty of fan theories about this show, so if this video does well, then maybe I'll cover more in the future. We'll see about that later, but for now, carry on.